achievement. Thank you all for taking your time and coming today. I know that y'all are on summer break.
No problem.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's have some fun. If you are the first person to answer the question, you get a ticket for a $5 gift card to Sonic. Okay? So you get a ticket if you are the first person to answer, and there's a little bit of content matter that you have to know. So who can define a noun?
Oh! No, you can't do it. You have to raise your
Brittany
hand.
raised her hand first.
Person places their idea.
Very good, Brittany. Good job. Good job. Okay, I'll clarify a little bit. You have to raise your hand and I'll call on you. Solve 78 times 29. The first person to solve 78 times 29 gets a ticket.
2,262.
Let me double check that.
Rain Man.
She used her calculator, you don't have to. No, I didn't. All the work for sure.
Great job. You did wonderful. What is the capital of Alaska? Wilson.
Juneau?
Do you know Alaska?
It is Juneau. Juneau, good job. That's what I thought. All right, my science people. Y'all should know this one. What are the 3 layers of soil?
It's been a long time.
Nobody? Okay, there's the first one is on
The top
Soil.
soil.
Middle soil.
But it starts with an H.
No.
I'm a
topsoil.
I just said topsoil. Sediment, silt,
Sedimentary.
sand. Sand.
Subsoil.
Subsoil. And then
Bottom soil.
Lava.
bed.
Bedrock.
I'll give everybody one ticket because that was a group effort. Great job, guys. Great job. Okay. So, tickets are also going to be given out throughout the entire session, so make sure to participate at all times. Just like y'all just did, you did a great job. So anyways, we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty, okay, of how expectations impact student achievement. And this was based off of the survey that y'all took for me, based off of the needs that y'all, I guess, voted on the survey from your input. So the goals of this professional development are to understand how high expectations encourages a growth mindset and leads to high achievement. You're going to gain knowledge of ways to maintain high expectations in the classroom and create a list of expectations specifically tailored for your own classroom. So you'll know and understand or have these 3 things when you leave our professional development today. So we're going to create some session norms real quick. So think about how do you want to be treated during this professional development session. Share your thoughts with your group real quick. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to just talk about how you want to be treated by your peers. So y'all talk.
That has nothing to do with the way you want to be treated. Really makes no sense. I would like to be treated with no phones. This is true, no phones. Good one.
That is a good one so that we can keep engagement high. All right, so somebody share your idea of how you want to be treated during the norms.
Fairly.
Define that.
As in, I don't like when people get treated better.
But how can we make that a norm?
What's more common with students?
Okay, so I'm gonna write these on the board. Each idea is valued. What else? What's another way that you would want to be treated?
I feel like we should put our best step forward and lay off technology.
Okay, so we're gonna say bring valuable ideas. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
No technology. What else?
Positivity.
Oh, I love that. I'm so positive about stuff. I love positivity. Anything else? Do we feel like we need to add any other norms? So we have each idea. What?
I think he's having an idea.
What's your idea?
Oh, no, I was saying that looks good. Maybe we
Okay.
can add on as.
Yeah, I mean, if something comes up, we can add as we go. So, okay, so I wrote the norms on the board. We have each idea is valued. Each person is going to bring valuable ideas to the table. No technology, and we're going to be positive with each other. Sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so keep these norms in mind throughout the session, and we'll be successful. Alright, so in order to create high expectations in your classroom, you must know your students. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to know your students. Okay, so how can we know our students? We can understand and know the cultural values of our students, and doing that allows the educator to meet the needs of the students to their best ability. Knowing if the student has educational support at home makes an impact on their education. So, I want y'all to think about a student that maybe you've had over the past couple of years that you knew that they didn't have educational support at home, but you supporting them and maintaining high expectations of them in your classroom allowed them to be successful. Does anybody have anything they want to share? Or talk with your table, talk with your group. Most of yours don't have educational support at home? How do you know that?
Well, a lot of them even fail by 5th grade.
They surpass their parents in certification.
Yeah, and sometimes their parents are busy working like 2 and 3 jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not home all the time to put as much emphasis on their education because they're trying to be able to keep a roof over their head.
So how does that impact their success in your classroom if they don't have educational support at home?
Well, they don't do they don't do the extra stuff that makes them grow, like the extra reading on their own, or the extra, homework problems that, they can work on.
Okay, so y'all have experienced that with students, correct? Y'all have experienced not having educational support at home and just different cultural backgrounds. I know that I've experienced that as well in my own classroom over the years. So, despite their home life, family situation, parents' financial situation, etc., you have to expect the very best from every single student. So, what kind of expectations are we talking about? When I'm thinking of high expectations, I'm just thinking about things that I expect them to do in my class, and that's different for every classroom. It can be different because personality, because you know your students, because of your content area, grade level, so on and so forth. So to give you an idea, here are things I expect my students to do each day. They are expected to be accountable for themselves. Okay, so I told them to be accountable for yourself. You have to show your work on all assignments and use your strategies at all times. So obviously I teach 5th grade math. So those are just some non-negotiables that even the highest student is expected to show their work, use their strategies, just like the very lowest performing student is expected to do the same as well. Trying your best despite the circumstances around you as well. We don't want them to use their home life, circumstances going on around them as a way to get out of being successful. So why must we hold students to high expectations? I passed out an article and I want you to take a couple of minutes. It's titled Mindsets and Equitable Education. And just take a couple minutes, read that. I'll pass out some highlighters. I want you to highlight parts that are important to you. And then I'll tell you 2 parts that really stuck out to me, and we'll kind of discuss it a little bit. We got some highlighters. You want to highlight important parts. We need a line on it. I figured we might. There we go. Give y'all about 1 more minute and then we'll discuss this article. The things we found interesting in it. So, I know that some of you might still be finishing up, but I think that you've read most of the article. So, let's go ahead and talk about, I'll point out my 2 parts that when I read out, are we good to turn the lights off?
Yes.
Okay. When I read this article, these 2 parts in particular stood out to me. Not really sure where this is at. Remember that?
I highlighted that one.
Ooh, did you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a minute. So it says recent research has shown that student mindsets have a direct influence on their grades, and that teaching students to have a growth mindset raises their grades and achievement test scores significantly. So when I read that, that in particular stood out to me. So I went ahead and highlighted that one. And then the second one was, it is essential for educators to communicate that they hold a growth mindset. So this is talking about that they have a growth mindset for themselves, so that you express to your students that you know that you don't know everything, you're not perfect, you know that you're constantly growing and learning. So a couple of y'all highlighted this first one, so let's talk about that. What made y'all highlight that, the recent research?
Well, everything in society is basing everything on test scores and achievement tests and things like that. So, it just goes to show you that if a student believes that they can still grow and get better at something, they're gonna try harder.
Mm-hmm.
And it will raise their grades.
Okay, so how can student achievement negatively impact their
Well,
schooling?
The other part that I highlighted?
Yep.
On page 28, says those who are praised for intelligence lose their confidence and motivation, but those who are praised for effort remain to keep trying.
That's a good one. I didn't highlight that, but I think that did kind of stand out to me. And I think we've talked about that in other professional developments, that you should praise them for effort and trying instead of just intelligence. You know, yeah, you're so smart. You know, tell them you tried hard, you did good work. Did anybody highlight anything different? Because I'd kind of like to hear what y'all highlighted.
I highlighted students with a growth mindset focused on learning, believes in effort, and were resilient in the face of setbacks. But those who had a fixed mindset worried more about looking smart and not making mistakes. They didn't feel like they needed to put in any more effort because their intelligence was good enough.
Right, and they feel like they're not going to go much further than what they've already done. Any other areas?
The messages that promote a growth mindset, the bottom one, it says school is not a place that judges you. It is a place where people help your brain grow new connections. And
Okay.
I think that's important, especially working with the lower academic students.
Yeah.
I think they need to know that they're not judged on that.
Right, they're not judged for their intelligence. We're here to help them grow and learn. Okay, so I just thought that this was an interesting article. It kind of gives the two different sides of growth mindset, fixed mindset. Kind of opens your eyes to a student's perspective, so I kind of liked that. So we talked about our thoughts on this article. Was there anything that we talked about what we already agreed with. Was there anything that you disagreed with? Was there anything that you found that you thought that doesn't sound right, that's not true, that you could take it out of the article, you would? I personally didn't really find anything, I don't think.
I can picture like whole classes that fit in with this.
Right.
Especially my high classes, they're on that fixed mindset. I don't even realize it. But the part that jumped out at me, it said, for the fixed mindset is that if you don't have the ability, you have to find another way to succeed. And the kids that believe in like fixed themselves will cheat. When I think about it, most of the kids that I catch cheating are the higher kids.
Yes, and my highest class this year, I had my GT students, they were consistently the lowest performing on every single CBA, every benchmark, even the state assessment. They were the lowest, they had the lowest performing pass rate every single time. And so I would talk to them about that, and I'd say, y'all are my GT class, there's no reason that we're not having, that y'all should be having such a low pass rate. But it's that fixed mindset, they think they've got it, and they're really not kind of sometimes willing to work for it.
I wish the article went further and helped deal with the fixed mindset.
Yes, yeah, it kind of just talks about,
In the kids.
yeah. So, just going back to why must we hold students to high expectations? So kind of what I gathered from this article is if you hold your students to high expectations, it kind of creates a cycle. So you've got high expectations, that leads to a growth mindset and developing a growth mindset in your students. when they have a growth mindset, they're constantly going to be self-motivated to continue to learn and achieve more and more. That self-motivation leads to achievement, and then it just cycles back around. So, placing high expectations on our students creates a constant cycle of learning, self-motivation, and achievement. Students learn that they can accomplish their goals despite obstacles or stereotypes that may be in their way. Something else that I found was interesting about that article is they did talk about stereotypes, like girls aren't good at math and science, which I think is absolutely absurd. You know, that's even kind of a way of thinking. But I think it talked about, what else did it talk about? Just different racial stereotypes. So I kind of found that was interesting too, and we've just got to break down those barriers and stereotypes in order to get our students going in this cycle of high expectations leading to growth mindset, self-motivation, and achievement. So that's kind of the bigger picture that I got from that article. Okay, I have a quick video for us to watch too. That's like 4 minutes. This video is these people are from Auckland, New Zealand, and they'll kind of explain it a little bit more. But it talks about high achievement, ability grouping, and just the way that they structure their classrooms to motivate students to have a growth mindset.
Little 5-year-olds bounce in the classroom door, and within 2 to 3 weeks maximum, they're in an ability group where they're labelled, and for the rest of their school life, pretty much, they remain in those ability groups. It sets them up for either achievement or failure right through schooling. The Teacher Expectation Project was based around my research on high expectation teachers, where I identified particular practices and beliefs of high expectation teachers that differed from those of other teachers. High expectation teachers are those who have high expectations for everybody in the class. And they did things like not ability grouping, for example. They used flexible kinds of grouping. They created a very warm classroom climate so that it became like a little community where everyone worked together. And they set very clear learning goals with their students so that children knew exactly where they were and where they were going next. But they didn't make ability salient in the classroom day after day. Interestingly, New Zealand has the highest grouping rate of any OECD country, and we also have the highest disparity between our highest and our lowest achievers. I don't think that's coincidence. I applied for a Marsden Fast Start grant, and I was very fortunate to actually win it. That was an experimental study where we randomly assigned teachers to either the intervention group or the control group, and then the intervention group were trained in the practices of high expectation teachers, and they also learned about verbal versus non-verbal behaviour.
Why did you go at your top? This one? He's totally praising. He's like, Princess Marie, you got nuggets in the morning. Yeah, like that.
If a teacher expects you to do well, she pushes you and gives you work that's higher than your age.
She doesn't do anything negative, nothing like that. It's everything positive to make you feel better.
It definitely makes me feel more confident.
She will let me do my best, and she'll show me my gaps so I can work on it.
Being part of the Teacher Expectation Project was actually a real blessing. Like, lots of things just stuck with me. For example, the fact that about 30% of students are actually in the wrong group. They're not being assessed correctly or for whatever reason.
Ability grouping is entrenched in New Zealand, particularly in reading. And interestingly, we got the largest effects in maths. The students in the intervention group gained 28% above what the control group gained over just 1 year. That's more than a whole term's learning in 1 year. And it was mostly, I think, because teachers were more able to move away from ability grouping in maths because it's not quite as entrenched. Whereas in reading, they really struggle. Teachers in New Zealand just don't know how to teach reading without students being an ability group. I've been developing a proposal for a project that I'm calling the HEIGHT project, which is High Teacher Expectation. We thought that we would train the mentor teachers rather than the teachers themselves, because those are the management people who can then work with their teachers to embed the practices of high expectation teachers. When we had senior management people involved, their students did even better than in schools where management has really taken interest. The more that teachers engage in the practices of high expectation teachers, the greater were the gains for their students.
So I had found that video and I just thought that it was very, very interesting and kind of representative of what that article focused on a little bit. So what I kind of got from this video was, instead of them kind of telling you how to maintain high expectations, it was kind of telling you what keeps teachers from creating a high expectation classroom. And one of those things was ability grouping, and she had said that ability grouping keeps students working at the level that they are first assessed at, and I just thought that was very interesting that she said that they come in at 5 years old, they get stuck into a group and they're stuck there forever. And it's just, from year to year, it really doesn't challenge them, it doesn't push their boundaries, it doesn't really change. And then they also talked about not setting clear learning goals. And I thought that was something super, super important that they talked about, is that the students learn that their teacher has to communicate the learning goals very clearly so that they can make connections, fill in gaps, and just have high expectations of themselves. So what is something that, I want to know what stood out to y'all, because I found that video pretty interesting, and I want to know if you found it interesting, if you didn't find it interesting, if there was just one thing that you thought was something that you would take and kind of want to learn more about.
I feel like the control class that they were talking about was kind of like the fixed mindset group, and then
And that's kind of what I related it back to also, is that like it kind of made me think about when we're putting them, when we're assessing them when they come in and sticking them in an ability group, that we're creating a fixed mindset within our students. We're not letting them fluctuate in their groupings.
28% is a lot of growth in a year.
Especially
for a group of
when
students.
it's like 28% of the lower kids that, you know.
Yes,
that's
but I've never had that, never
and
seen
it's
that growth
28%
before.
above, in addition to the normal growth.
Right.
So it's,
And another thing that stood out to me was she said that 30% of the students are grouped incorrectly. So I thought that kind of blew my mind, because I would have never thought that. I know that my ELAR person might have something to say about ability grouping, and how she stated that it's a little bit easier to get away from ability grouping in math, but it's a little bit more tough in ELAR. What are your thoughts about that? Because I know we've kind of had discussions before about that.
Well, the first part about the 30%, we all know that we have some students who are like, why do people want to follow that assessment? Some kids test well and some kids don't. When we use the data from the assessment simulator, yeah, you're gonna have people that either tested really great or really low. Like, you even have low students, like, how did you do this? Like,
They amaze you.
yeah, like, there's no way. But I do think, yeah, you can't ability group based on the assessments. You've gotta sit with them. You gotta sit and see if the assessments are even right. I mean, they could surprise you. On ELR, it's hard not to ability group when it comes to reading aloud. Because if you have a high reader that can read almost the same as a teacher, they get bored and they tune out, and they kind of demean the struggling reader. And then the struggling reader could get discouraged, and they don't want to take that risk in front of the better readers. So it's kind of a double-edged sword on that one. But if you teach praising them for their abilities, as in trying, taking that chance, you know, you tried that word, you never gave up. You know, that was a difficult word and you stuck with it, and their confidence builds. It's a challenge, hitting those different levels.
Right, and that is what I thought about when she mentioned that in reading it's more challenging to get away from the ability grouping because they are reading. Like, you can't put a kid that's reading 3 or 4 grade levels above with a kid that's reading 2 or 3 grade levels below grade level, you know? So it's challenging, but that's definitely a program that I'm interested in looking a little bit more into, just to learn more about that. So I just thought that was a very interesting video, and it related directly to a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, just on talking about that ability grouping.
Well, I found that in those small reading groups, if you change
The focus from can you read this to we're reading this to find an answer, or we're reading this to like discover the cycle, or whatever. A lot of our stuff is science and social studies readers. So if we're reading and we switch the focus, like I'm trying to do practice reading, yes, but you aren't. Your goal isn't to be perfect. It's to find, you know.
Right, you've got to kind of manipulate it in a way that it makes them think it's like their idea. They want to do
It
it.
takes me 15 minutes to read a paragraph. I found the answer.
Right. And that's a good way to work around those smaller issues that we have like that. So, data to back up expectations equals achievement. This is data from y'all's campus that I pulled up. So just based on some conversations that I've had and some data that I've looked at, conversations that I've had with various educators and instructional coaches and other people that are at this field experience site. So in 2016, we're looking at 5th grade math. In 2016, the cumulative MET standard was 75% on the math STAR test. And these are all over the same standard. So I just kind of wanted to pull up some data to show y'all. In 2017, the cumulative MET standard was 78%. So a little bit of growth. 3% is like what? Y'all have about 150 students per grade level. Okay, so that's a couple kids. That's a couple more kids. About what, like 5 kids? 5 kids. Okay, trying to figure that out in my head. My brain's still on summer mode. Alright, and then 2018, cumulative MET standard was 93%. So, based off of conversations, like I said, I pulled this data up based off of the survey, based off of conversations that I've had with various educators here, various other people that work directly with teachers. So just talking about what does this data mean, that the data simply is shown to represent that once expectations are communicated and modeled to students, they will rise to the occasion. So it's not just about keeping them in a routine, it's about clearly communicating those expectations and modeling it. You know, when you've had a tough day, you can't give in and just let them do whatever they want to do. You know, you've got to hold them to those high expectations or they're going to take that and run with it. Like I previously stated, through communication with other teachers, instructional coaches, and other people, it's evident that high expectations are directly related to student achievement and can be connected to the recent growth on the STAR test. I wanted to pull up some data from this year also because in talking to y'all and in talking to other people, all 3 math grade levels did show growth from the previous year in this year, and I wanted to show that, but that data is just not out yet. So I just had to use something from last year. So I want you to pull up your own STAR data from this year and look through it. Okay? And what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to look at 2 different people. And this is going to be pretty quick because you probably honestly know the 2 people that I'm fixing to ask you to think about. I want you to think of and look at the student who had the highest score on that STAR test. Okay? I want you to think about, did you expect them to have the highest score? What were your expectations of that student? Because looking back on my previous school year, I can think of a student that made a 100, and I expected nothing less of him. And I want you to look at the student with the lowest score, and I want you to think about what were your expectations of that student. And I have a particular student in mind from my campus that had the absolute lowest score, and he was absent for like 30 days. He was in and out of ISS, he was in and out of the office. So, looking back on my expectations of his performance, in a sense, it kind of matches what he did. So, I just want you to, for a second, talk about this with your table. Talk about the kids that performed the highest. What were your expectations of them throughout the year? Talk about your student that performed the lowest. What were your expectations of them? Were they the same? Were they different? Did you hold one to higher expectations, one to lower expectations? So take a couple minutes to talk about that, and I'll come over and listen.
With the exception of one student, I've ever had help them all to a positive level. Not one student had them like traumatic brain injury. Maybe he was not capable, but I still held him to that standard. Yeah. But my highest student is my student, and my second highest was a coach student. That's awesome. From those years, that's awesome. 97% and 92%. Right? Great.
What about you, Mr. Kramer?
Well, my lowest performing student couldn't take my expectations, so I only saw him for about a week out of the entire school year.
Okay.
My house is probably your house, but he has a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset.
And that's what I saw a lot with my kids this school year. It was a struggle to get those kids that they know they're smart, but they're okay with where they're at. I really couldn't convince them to grow anymore.
My accelerated class, I was definitely expecting more from.
And then when we did it, my two co-teach classes did so much better as far as.
All of y'all in here had co-teach, right? Y'all also like the co-teach performing higher than.
I think they grow more.
Like maybe not on the test necessarily, but throughout the year, do you think they performed at a higher level?
Yeah.
See, I've never had co-teach. So.
After the first
But-
assessment, yeah, because they all come in with a fixed mindset of, well, they know they're in co-teach, they know
Right.
that,
Yeah.
but once we start graphing the data and putting it up there and showing them that they're on par with the kids in the other
They're
classes,
hungry for it.
they're like, we'll do it. I mean, that's the same way as putting their AR points up on board.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've never had co-teach, but going back to my GT class, I had like 12 GT students in there. I mean, that was half the class, and they were constantly the lowest performing class. My third period class, only 50% of them passed the fourth grade star, but I think it was like 92% of them passed fifth grade. So they went from being the lowest to the highest performing, and I do think it has everything to do with, like one of y'all said, they're hungry for it, they want it, and they learn to have that growth mindset. So my purpose in asking you to do this is, when I thought about my highest students, is I expect when I'm walking around to see my highest students doing every single thing that I have told them to do, and most of them do. Sometimes they won't, they'll try and sneak and get away with it. But sometimes when I thought about some of the lower students that are in and out of my classroom because of behavior, they're absent all the time, like that one of mine had 30-something absences. I think that as teachers, sometimes we get into that, well, they're not going to do it, so I'm not going to say anything to them because it's not really going to make a difference. So I just kind of wanted us to maybe think about that a little bit, because I know, looking back on my year, I kind of maybe did that with a few. So research shows that students will rise to the occasion when expectations are high or settle when they are low. So that goes back to that equitable education article that we read. They stated that if the teacher holds them to high expectations, students are going to, they want to impress you, they want to do good. But if you have low expectations, that's all that they're going to try to meet.
And that's the same with the mindset. Like if the teacher has a fixed mindset, the kids are gonna have a fixed mindset.
Right. And kids know that. They're smart. They're not oblivious to stuff like that. They know if you think they're smart, they know if you think that they're not smart, so they're gonna pick up on that. Alright, so the next thing I want us to do is I want us to think about your expectations. think of all of your previous students, any year. Doesn't have to be last year, it could be just any students that you've had. Did you hold them to high expectations? Did you let them quit when things got tough? What would you like to change for next year? So just kind of reflecting on that. I mean, I know that I've changed as a teacher a whole lot from my first year to this was my 5th year, so I know that my mindset is completely different. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to come up with several non-negotiables you have for your students this coming school year. And it can be something as simple as what I have. These are non-negotiables, and it might not seem like a big thing, but once they see that you're sticking to it, they're going to feel forced to do everything that you tell them to do. It's going to be a non-negotiable for them, they have no choice. Mine is to make a math chart every day, correct all assignments to a 100, so when they bring it up to me and I grade it, they have to take it back to their desk and correct it, and they have to show the work, and then show all of your work, yes, even 2 plus 2, because I literally had some students this year that would say 5 when they would do 2 plus 2, and it would make me furious. So, those are just a few of my expectations, and in the grand scheme of things, they seem so small, but when you're focused on something on a larger scale, such as STAR Test, NWEA, AIMSweb, whatever some of those other programs might be that you use, these expectations are going to be in the back of their mind, and they're going to do that and everything else you taught them because you did not let them skip out on that. So, however many you want to make, if you can just think of 1, 2, 3, if you think of 10, that's great. I just want you to come up with a couple of non-negotiables that you want to hold your students to this school year. So I'll give you about, how much time do y'all think you need? 2 minutes? 2? Alright. So, you can talk to people if you're in the same content area. Y'all can talk if you're in the same grade level, you can talk. It doesn't even have to be academic related. It can be behavior related if you feel like you need some behavior expectations, if you feel like you need academic expectations, it can be whatever. I just want you to come up with something that you feel like you need to do in order to make your students successful. But it's really not, because they just bring their assignment to you, you grade it real quick, you give it back to them, they go sit back down, they work on it, and they're not allowed to bring it back up to me. It works. And what it does that I've seen is most of the time, you know, it was between the answer they picked and one other answer, and it's a tiny little mistake that they were unsure of, so it kind of trains their brain to see it correctly.
Yeah.
So,
And then it also comes into like some of them are competitive, so they like knowing, yeah, who can get the 100 first, you know, how many can they get right.
well, they get very, very upset when they come up to me and they've missed like 1 or 2. You know, they eventually start wanting to make that 100, and it's not like they feel like they've disappointed you, but like you said, it's that competitive thing where they want to come up to you the first time and it be a 100. They don't want to have to go back and correct it.
The ones that phone it in, they get frustrated, you're like,
Yep.
Yeah, that's the punishment right there. Like, I would get frustrated with students who, you know could do better, and they're like,
clearly they didn't try.
Mhm.
Really, I'm gonna put that 30 in the grade book.
Yep.
That's sending you all back 5,
Yep.
6 times. Again.
So, and it teaches them a work ethic that, you know, just take your time. I always tell them I did it right the first time, you wouldn't have to do it again. Because my dad always told me that, and I guess he was right. So, alright, so does anybody want to share any of your expectations that you have created for your students? Actually, I'm not going to give y'all an option. I just want to hear one from each person.
Know what their strengths and weaknesses are. I like for my students to know what
What
they're
they're
really good at and
about
what they need to work on all the time.
That's a good one, because that can sometimes be hard to find time to take out and do that, have those discussions with them. I like that.
I think mine's gonna be more behavioral, like be kind and maybe you don't get along with that person and being kind is just to leave them alone and you don't talk to them.
But I think that they need to find that balance of,
I agree, cause some
to not
students,
pick at people, to not
Right.
pick at each other, so.
right, I agree.
mine is to justify with evidence. So even if you have an opinion that proves why you have that opinion.
Would that be in like reading articles?
Well, it could be with articles, or just your own opinion, like, you know, when we were reading Meeting at we started talking about the wall down in Mexico. And I want to hear what they thought and why, like, why do you think that? Why do you think it's a good idea, why do you not? And just to know why they think something.
Right.
Can they prove it with the inference that they find, or is it like something that,
Maybe just heard from somebody else and they're kind of,
a lot of times they don't know how to take it to the next level.
right.
Okay. In addition to the ones that you put up there, that I do, you do. If I'm taking the time to work out the problem and show you the correct way, you do it also.
That's a
There's a
good one.
reason for everything that I do.
That is a good one because I had some that, they already knew how to do it, so they would not do it with me, and that creates its own issue of when they actually go back and have to do it themselves, they really don't know how to do it, so it's just, you're back at square one. So, I like those are some good expectations. So, wrapping up, what are some of your takeaways from today? Would anybody like to share a takeaway, something that just really stood out to them, that really helped them, that they, yes?
In the article, it said that, during like an intervention time or the extra classes that they were doing or something like that, and instead of taking that time to teach the content, they were taking that time to teach how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
And how if the kid understands that, then they have more stake in that, and they can
Right.
change their own brain, because they're trained already.
Yeah.
They've already spent several years in school.
I like that, and one of my favorite books that we read in college was Teaching with the Brain in Mind, and I still have that book. And yep, I've used that book even getting my master's, and I just really like it. I think the brain's interesting. I think that's a good point because, like we said earlier, kids are smart enough to know that stuff, and I think if we show them that we know that they're smart, you know, and that we know that they can understand things like that, they're gonna push themselves, and it's not gonna be all reliant upon us pushing them.
It's an attitude.
Yeah.
School should be an attitude, a mindset.
Yeah.
And the article also said that like even while kids were like studying new things, they were like
Picturing their brain making those new connections.
Yes, that girl was talking about the neurons, like she pictured the neurons connecting or something, and I was kinda like, okay, it's pretty cool. That is cool, like, I wouldn't have thought of a kid doing that, or I wouldn't have done that as myself as a kid, so I thought it was cool that just because of the mindset that they were creating in those students, that she was taking it upon herself to do that. Anybody else have a takeaway that they would like to share?
I think we've seen it. I mean, when Keely and we first started, it was growth.
I'm pretty sure when you guys started here, it's growth. I think it's gone away from that in the last few years.
And I think that has a lot to do with reducing declines. We see not just in student achievements, but in just morale and attitudes in teachers.
Because it goes back to the teachers themselves having
Yeah.
that growth
I
mindset.
can't tell you how many times I've heard a teacher say, we're really just a number.
They just can't. You're somehow communicating that to them. But
Right.
it says the stereotype groups gain the most. We've seen that. I mean, almost our entire school is stereotypic. Yeah.
Well, we could be in the same stuff as, the same groups as these students if you took a group of teachers instead of a control group.
Yeah.
Like that student success is teacher success as well, like
Right.
if you're training for that, then.
It's a reflection of the
Yeah.
teacher. It's actually not a bad idea.
Do study on the teachers. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
That'd be very interesting to see how it correlates and affects the student.
I thought about that, you know, when you see like, especially in fourth grade, when we had the reading and writing separated, and you could see a student that would pass one and not the other, and it's supposed to be so linked together or seamless. You know, instead of saying, oh, that kid's just good at math, or that kid's just good at reading,
Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the teacher has the fixed mindset. And that's why you don't see the big growth. Maybe it's not that one teacher's better than the other of the content. It's
We talked about that. Alright, does anybody have any questions for me? No questions? Everything was clear today?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thoughts? Any extra thoughts? I know we've talked a lot throughout this whole entire thing, so y'all might not have any more thoughts to share. Ideas. Does anybody have any ideas they would like to share? Maybe share this with some coworkers. Look into that high teacher expectation program from Auckland, New Zealand a little bit more.
Yep.
Alright, so I just want to go back to the goals real quick and just remind you of the goals.
Oh, clear learning goals.
Yeah, so do you feel like you understand how high expectations encourage growth mindset and lead to high achievement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like you gained knowledge of ways to maintain high expectations in your own classroom this upcoming school year?
Yes.
Okay. And did you create a list of expectations specifically tailored for your own classroom with your own students in mind?
Yes.
Alrighty, perfect. Yay. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for coming. I'll draw for your $5 gift card to Sonic. Hopefully I didn't drop any tickets.